This update from the Met Office for GB News. We will see some heavy showers clearing overnight, but clear spells and largely dry weather return by dawn, increasingly sunny and increasingly warm during the next few days. Now, we've got low pressure clearing to the east. That low pressure brought us some unsettled weather over the weekend, cool conditions as well. It continues to bring heavy showers overnight to eastern parts of the country, some thunderstorms and some persistent rain. But further west, largely clear and certainly more widely clear by dawn. Under those clear skies, a fresh start to the day on Tuesday, temperatures ranging between 8 and 13 Celsius. But plenty of sunshine around first thing. Across central parts of the UK. Start off with barely a cloud in the sky through the Midlands and central southern England. Either side of that, there will be some patchy cloud into West Wales, southwest England, and some showers running down the North Sea coast into East Anglia. Thicker cloud awaits across parts of western Northern Ireland, and that cloud also starting to drift into the Western Isles. Some patchy cloud into the north of Scotland, otherwise Scotland's largely cloud-free. Plenty of sunshine, and that sunshine causing temperatures to rise quickly through the morning. But there will be further showers into eastern England. They tend to fade away by early afternoon. Still some cloud here and thicker cloud across Northern Ireland and western Scotland. A few spots of rain associated with this. High teens in the northwest, where we've got the sunshine elsewhere, low 20s to mid-20s fairly widely. And then we start Wednesday with plenty of sunshine once again towards the southeast, thicker cloud towards the northwest, some outbreaks of rain, mostly light and patchy for western and northern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And that tends to fizzle away later in the day as higher pressure builds, and that higher pressure is going to lead to widespread sunny skies on Thursday and into Friday, and that means widespread hot air returning.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News traffic and travel report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Motorists should use caution on the A9 Dornoch Bridge due to high winds. The M4 eastbound from Junction 28 Tredegar Park to Junction 24 Coldra is closed for roadworks, with diversions. An accident on the M60 clockwise entry slip at Junction 26 in Stockport has closed all lanes. In Leicestershire, congestion on the M69 northbound between Junction 1 and the M1 causes delays. In Buckinghamshire, an M40 northbound accident between Junctions 4 and 5 closes 2 lanes. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and cross-country services are disrupted at Birmingham New Street and Gloucester. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News traffic and travel report.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening and a very, very warm welcome to GB News Tonight. With me, your host, Martin Daubney, on tonight's show. After a huge public backlash, the government is finally set to publish data for foreign benefits claimants by nationality. Now, with foreigners costing British taxpayers £7.5 billion a year in universal credit alone, that means there could be some huge headlines in Britain. And trust in Labour's border control is at rock bottom. And now Sir Keir Starmer's flagship one-in, one-out migrant deal with France is facing the axe from the European Union. Plus, Armed Forces Day was celebrated nationwide this weekend, but one Labour-run council stripped the parade of uniforms and equipment, fearing it might glorify war and spark protests. You couldn't make it up? That's all coming next. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Brace yourselves for another Chris Hope exclusive. We've got a cracking exclusive. Get into its usual ways. GBNews.com/your say is the way to do it. There. Brace yourselves for that chopper exclusive. But first, here's your latest news headlines from Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. Fast approaching 2 minutes past 7. The top story, well, the names of the 52 victims of the 7/7 London bombings have been read out today at a memorial service marking 20 years since those devastating attacks. Families, survivors and first responders gathered at St Paul's Cathedral, where white petals fell as the names were read by loved ones. 4 candles were also carried through the cathedral for each site of the bombings in 2005, which killed 52 and injured over 700. King Charles and Sir Keir Starmer called for unity as events across London paid tribute to the lives lost. Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has been in central London for us today, and in Hyde Park, a ceremony took place there.
Well, here in Hyde Park, it was a very intimate and moving service attended by Prince William alongside survivors and the families of the 52 victims who lost their lives that day. And we heard from a number of the guests, including a sister whose brother was killed on the Aldgate train. We also heard from a doctor who was on that train, injured herself, but helped a number of the victims. Prince William also attended a private reception after he laid flowers alongside a number of those family members, and he spent a lot longer than was scheduled actually spending time with them inside Hyde Park, remembering the 52 victims who have lost their lives.
Well, I'll bring you an update on the situation in Texas after those flash floods in just a moment. But first, a breaking line coming to us from Reuters. We're hearing that a British ship in the Red Sea has been attacked, reportedly by Houthi rebels, with the UAE, United Arab Emirates, saying that the Safine Prism vessel operated by a British-flagged company have responded to distressful calls from that ship and rescued the crew on board after it was reportedly attacked. So we'll keep across any developments there as the situation continues to get resolved by those rescue efforts. Turning, though, to the situation in Texas, and the death toll has now risen to at least 91 after flash floods ripped through Kerr County in the early hours of Friday last week. At least 27 young girls and staff from a Christian summer camp are among the dead, with dozens still missing and search efforts now into a 4th day. President Trump has signed a major disaster declaration as questions mount over whether warnings were timely or effective. And with more storms on the way, flood alerts in place are expected until at least tonight. And Donald Trump is threatening new tariffs for nations aligning with the BRICS alliance, which he says will see anti-American rhetoric. The US president says any country backing BRICS policies made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa will face an additional 10% tariff with no exceptions. His warnings on social media came after BRICS leaders issued a joint statement claiming that rising tariffs were threatening global trade. It also comes as President Trump's administration is racing to finalise a string of new trade deals before a July 9th tariff deadline. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with another update at 8 o'clock. Now, though, let's get back to Martin.
Thank you, Sam. Now, welcome to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Dorban. And we're kicking off the show tonight with some breaking news, and it comes from our man. Now, please go ahead to Chris Hope. Chris, you've got a sizzling exclusive for us. Tell us more.
That's right, Martin. We're tracking, aren't we, in recent weeks, former Tory MPs jumping ship to reform UK. We know about Dame Andrea Jenkins, the new mayor for Greater Lincolnshire, Marco Longhi in January, more recently Ross Thompson, Scottish Tory MP formerly, Anne-Marie Morris. They've joined in the past 2 weeks. A big name has joined tonight, we can reveal. He's called David Jones. He's a former Tory MP, a former Tory cabinet minister, Welsh secretary under David Cameron, 2012-2014, a Tory member for 50 years, a Brexit department minister when Theresa May was Prime Minister. He's told us in a statement tonight that Reform UK is the party that best represents my views, he says. And I believe some of many others who have become disillusioned with the two major parties. There he is on screen now. Across the country, David Jones says, people are rightly concerned about the rising cost of living, the escalating crisis of illegal immigration and the steady erosion of our national sovereignty. Neither the government nor the official opposition, the Tory party, is addressing those issues with the urgency or resolve they demand. Indeed, the government is actually actively surrendering our sovereignty at an alarming rate. He, of course, was deputy chairman of the European Research Group of Tory MPs, a kind of an absolute prime Spartan Brexiteer, so sovereignty matters to him. Only Reform UK is demonstrating the determination needed to tackle the country's many problems and to improve the lives of people across Britain. Now, he was a North Walian Tory MP. He is not standing for office. Right. He is 72 years old. He served with distinction as an MP. He's a member of the party for 50 years, but he's had enough. And that is fascinating. You have someone here, I think, who is trusted by the Tory right, someone who did a lot of the thinking on the Tory Brexiteer right. And the fact that he's going to Reform UK is alarming, I think, for the modern-day Tory party.
Certainly is. And so just to be resolutely clear, a former Welsh secretary, a heavyweight in the Department for Exit in the European Union under Boris Johnson, would be a huge addition to the active party. There's been a lot of talk about who could be the leader of Reform Wales. You're saying it won't be David Jones because he won't be standing. This is the token, emotional, sentimental defection, as it were, but he won't be actively involved in the front line.
It won't be him, but what I find fascinating viewing it from Westminster, it's like one of those cairns you build when you go walking. You put a stone on a pile and another stone, and it eventually becomes a pile of stones. In a sense here, you've got this pile of Tories, former Tories, piling up in support of Nigel Farage's party. It gives it respectability, it gives it credibility, and that's what I think should be alarming Kevin Badenoch, the Tory leader. But as things stand, I'm sure Nigel Nelson, the guest here tonight, will have more on this. We are seeing Tories go across, but not Labour, former Labour people.
Let's just look at the current political landscape in Wales. I think we've got a map of the voting intention we can show. And make no mistake, Wales is central. We can see on your screens there the Reform UK party set to do incredibly well in both the Westminster voting intentions and the Senate voting intentions. Of course, the next set of national elections in May, a year on from council elections, Chris Hope, Wales and Scotland, but particularly Wales, I think, seen as central to the party's continued success. The next measurable in that route towards what Nigel Farage might think is the route to Downing Street. We've got some current voting data just to run through. At present, Reform UK is on 29%. In Wales, Plaid Cymru, you can see there on the coast, Plaid Cymru on 27, Labour 21, the Tories 8%. And an incredible statistic, Chris Hope, is that only 47% of people who voted for the Labour Party at the last general election a year ago are going to vote for Keir Starmer again in a potential future next election. For the Welsh Parliament. So all eyes on Wales. Nigel Farage will see Wales as a building block moving forward. This is a big defection tonight.
It is a big deal, and it will give a lot of comfort to other Conservatives who we think Nigel Farage is talking to come across too. So I think, you know, we're not seeing a flood yet, but we are seeing senior people who are respected on the Tory right, though, not elsewhere in politics, only on the Tory right, coming across to Reform UK. Just going back to Wales, I was in there, as you were, in the Reform UK conference when Nigel Farage spoke to his supporters back in September. I was fascinated by what a line he said. He said vividly, there are two words that matter to me right now. It's the DeHont system, DeHont system. And
proportional representation.
And that means in Wales, they're expanding their proportional representation. They're almost doubling the number of AMs, assembly members who can be there, under the DeHont system. And that means the more votes you rack up, the more Senate members you get. And DeHont, the way they're reshaping the electoral system in Reform, in Wales, forgive me, is going to really help Reform next year.
And it's worth pointing out, on this current modelling before defection, the projection for the Senate, for the Welsh Parliament, Reform 34 seats, Plaid Cymru 30, Labour 21, Conservatives 8. That would mean, Nigel Nelson, GBNews, a senior political commentator, not only is this 10 councils that Reform could control, but they could, for the first time, control the country.
Yes, but bear in mind that would be a hung parliament rather than an outright majority. So you would expect some of the others to get together to stop Reform governing. I mean, I'm not taking away their achievement. They're quite clearly on a roll, and I think that David Jones' defection is another sign of that. But really, to make a complete breakthrough, I think that they've got to, first of all, they really need an existing Tory MP to come across to them. And as Chris mentioned, the other point would be to get a Labour bigwig who would also defect, which would take away this idea that it's a battle between left and right.
Do you think that's true, though? I mean, all of the polling, all of the data in Wales in particular shows us that the voters are jumping ship, you know, faster than somebody could slide down Snowdonia away from the Labour Party. Their votes simply collapsed. Less than half of the voters who voted for Keir Starmer in 2024 in July would vote for the Labour Party again. Would a Labour defection actually bring, I don't know, some tainted baggage?
Well, no, I think that the important thing is to actually show that Reform would be a party for the entire country. And a win in Wales would at least show that they can run a country if they ever did. But I don't see, based on these figures, they don't actually end up in overall control. So I'm not sure that we're jumping the gun a bit to think that Reform will actually form the next Welsh government.
And you might find, Chris, so there'd be more chance of a cold day in hell than the Labour Party doing a deal to work in conjunction with Nigel Farage in Wales.
No question. That's what we've heard in the past from previous leaders, and also Plaid Cymru will be similar. So it could be a minority party. We'll wait and see. But this party is going to be tested. As you say, it's baby steps Reform UK, but next May, Wales and to a lesser extent Scotland, where they could keep Labour out, they're going on in current polling.
And do you think that, you talk about baby steps, David Jones retired from the Conservative Party, this is a defection?
As an MP, not from the party.
Right.
So he quit the party last October after 54 years with a letter to the party chairman.
That's right, and he informed he would not renew his membership in October 2023 and received no reply to that letter, apparently.
According to, he says after 54 years he received no reply from the then chairman, and then he joined Reform UK when his membership lapsed in January.
Meanwhile, Chris, a lot of people speculate, as ever, about could there be a defection, a big beast, as it were,
all sorts of
to
chatter.
the party, the main party in Westminster.
Well, I think what's stopping it happening is the uncertainty over Kemi Badenoch, because I think that all the talk outs in the bars around Westminster is how is she doing? Can she last? She's got a very difficult hand. She hasn't yet given a single speech to the Tory party conference as leader. Don't forget, it hasn't happened yet. She was made leader last November. So she hasn't really been tested, and MPs over there, they can't send letters of a lack of confidence in her until after that deadline passes in early November. So we are really at the very beginning of Kemi Badenoch's time as leader. I think people, because of the uncertainty about her, because it's a really hard hand she's been dealt with by this landslide victory last July. Will she hang around? Will Robert Jenrick come in? James Cleverly? Other names being touted. And if you're an ambitious Tory party MP, why would you jump ship to a new party with the uncertainty of that with Nigel Farage when you may have a new leader within a year in the Tory party?
OK, thank you, gentlemen. I've got a quick line of breaking news for us now, and it's this. Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, has acknowledged that MPs are feeling disheartened and bruised after last week's welfare vote. Speaking at the weekly meeting of MPs and sitting alongside the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, she said, "We must learn from this, and we will." So there we go. Labour MPs are feeling disheartened and bruised. Chris Hope, I put it to you, the electorate is feeling disheartened and bruised, and so are people who want to try and take back control of our benefits bill.
Yes, well, these are MPs who wonder why they're in power to cut the benefits bill by $5 billion. They've managed to see that off from the Labour government, and now they're threatened by not getting through a lifting of the two-child benefit cap this autumn. Where will this government raise money from? It's trying to, I think, go towards where the votes are for the next election, being pulled back constantly away from that by some of the other PLP, as witnessed there by Angela Rayner saying, "You're battered and bruised, we'll try and get through this."
Nigel Nelson, I put it to you, if Labour MPs are feeling battered and bruised, well, the blooming hell of voters going to think when taxes are hiked in the autumn budget to pay for all this nonsense?
Well, I mean, the first thing is bear in mind that the nonsense, as you call it, never quite got through. So the
vote was a farce.
Yeah, I mean,
they voted on nothing. Fresh air.
What we ended up with was two major mistakes by Keir Starmer: the winter fuel allowance, which you turned on, then welfare last week with disability benefits. That leaves Rachel Reeves trying to find the money from elsewhere. So yes, there are likely to be tax rises come the budget in October.
Something they promised they wouldn't do.
Well, it depends what taxes they raise. I mean, what they've promised not to do is raise income tax, VAT and employee national insurance. There are other taxes they could go for. A new gambling tax, that's what Gordon Brown reckons would raise another £4 billion. They could go for a wealth tax. There are things they can do to actually raise money, but the most important thing at the moment is Keir Starmer has made mistakes. Better to make those mistakes in your first year of a 5-year term than last year.
Chris Hope, we are facing now the inevitability, it seems, of tax rises, something the Labour Party, doesn't matter how you dress it up, Nigel, we were promised no tax rises on working people. If wealthy people are working people. This idea that working people are somehow part of the proletariat, this socialist dream.
But they're not millionaires. I mean, the whole point is
millionaires work. Millionaires pay the most tax.
If you were doing a wealth tax,
they've been driven out the country.
You are looking at people who are worth over £10 million. That is not what you would describe as a working person.
The wealthiest 10% pay 60% of all tax in the United Kingdom, and a wealth tax on them would drive even more of them out of the country. 16,500 millionaires are going to leave the country this year as these tax crackdowns bite.
Martin, this came up today in the briefing with Number 10 Downing Street. Now, we were told this by the government. We've repeatedly said that those with the broadest shoulders carry the greatest burden, and the choices we have made reflect that. We are committed, they said, the wealthiest in our society should pay their fair share of tax. They've closed non-dom loopholes, they say, increased air passenger duty on private jets, and they said that in the past the Chancellor has said she's against a wealth tax, but they can't comment on future policies.
Just like in the past, they were against that they were for supporting the WASP women. Just like in the past, they were against raising taxes on pensioners.
It's how they spend the money. I mean, if you're spending money and it's going into the people who need it the most, and it's understood why you're doing it by those who are high earners, it's maybe defensible, but maybe it's not, though.
Chris Hope, I don't know how old you are. I don't want to ask, but you remember the days when huge taxes on the mega wealthy forced them abroad. A lot of them never came home. I put it to you, those are the broadest shoulders will carry their bags all the way to the airport and fly off to Dubai.
Well, that is concerning, and that's why you've got Nigel Farage's party bringing forward this Britannia card to bring back those non-doms who have fled the country, to allow them to come back to the UK, pay their taxes and be let off IHT, inheritance tax for 20 years, 250 grand for 20 years, 10 years being here.
Nigel Nelson, why does the Labour Party of today and the Labour Party of my childhood simply believe that you can passively tax millionaires to death and they won't clear off?
Well, not all of them will. I mean, some will. I accept that a few people will go. The majority are staying.
16,500, mate.
That figure is not confirmed. That is a figure that's been come out from a think tank. We don't know about it.
Chris, you've got some breaking news.
We're getting some more lines here from Angela Rayner. Now, what happens here is The Parliamentary Labour Party meets every Monday around 6 p.m. A different minister addressed it. Angela Rayner, of course, elected by the members, deputy leader. She says this, as well as being disheartened and bruised, she says this: we must learn from this, and we will. We must learn from last week, and we will. That says to me, if you want to see more cuts to the benefit system, well, I'm not sure that'll get through. We will learn from what happened last week. This party is out of touch. It's with its own members in the House of Commons. Clearly, Angela Rayner is going to try and mend that.
Well, if Angela Rayner and co feel disheartened and bruised, how do the voters feel? Nigel Nelson, Chris Hope, excellent. Great exclusive, Chris. As ever, best in the business. Thank you very much. Now, after a huge public backlash, the government is finally set to publish data for foreign benefits claimants by nationality. What's taken them so long, with foreigners costing British taxpayers an astonishing £7.5 billion every year in universal credit alone? That's next.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Bishopsthorpe Road, it's on the verges of York City Centre, and it was once crowned the best high street in Britain, but there is a new issue facing it, and that is?
The cost of parking. It's increased by, wait for it, 500%.
And they've done that overnight without consultation, right?
Yeah.
So it now costs £4.85 an hour, right? And what's that going to do? It's going to stop people visiting.
It's going to drive people away.
Anna, it's not easy to get around York, I have to say. One road in, one road out type thing, congestion around the place. Yes, there's car parking spaces, but goodness me, I mean, this is obviously very, very controversial, and these are the sort of taxes, indirect taxes, that come on all of us. It's now going to cost us so much money just to get there, just to see there. Tell us more.
That's right, Eamon, and the City of York Council have introduced this to try and reduce congestion, to try and get more people on buses.
Extra things like this just mean that it's been unprepared, but also it just adds up, and it then stops you from doing other things. And then, for people that haven't got enough money to eat and to look after the kids and things, I think it's disgusting, to be honest.
Thank you for speaking with us this morning, Karen. Really appreciate it. The council say that they are going to review these charges. They're going to look at them every 3, 6 and 9 months and start engaging with the local community to just see how fair these prices are.
OK, Anna Riley.
Where are you parked this morning, Anna?
We're parked here, £22.50 it's cost us.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Lord, preparing for battle with Nigel Nelson on this next story, because to a story that seems to have gone under the radar, that the Department for Work and Pensions will now be releasing at long last a full breakdown of universal credit claims by nationality and immigration status in the upcoming release of those statistics on the 15th of July. That's right, a week tomorrow. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Before we get to the the debate, Nigel, let's talk you through some of the data that we do have so far. That's, at the moment, you can't get any of this kind of data. It's not published by the British government. It is published in the Netherlands. It is published in Germany. So in the UK, we have to work around. We get benefits claims by nationality. We compare it with census data, and we're able to produce tables such as this. Let's get the first table on screen. This is for the Centre for Migration Control. Rob Bates did this for us at GB News. You can see at the top there the people from Congo, Iraq, Afghanistan, Algeria, Eritrea, Syria, Somalia, Iran, Morocco, and they all have significantly higher propensity to claim benefits per thousand compared to those from Britain. And this is, by the way, mirrored across the European bloc when we can get the data. Let's get our next graphic now. This was compiled in a report called Taking Back Control. Robert Jenrick had his fingerprints on this. This was compiled last year. You can see on your screen there, if you can't see, you're on radio, I'll explain. This is the economic inactivity by country of birth, and this is census data from 2021, so it's some 4 years out of date, but it mirrors that trend at the top, the so-called MENAT nations. That's the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey. Below that, we have South Asia. Then we have below that East Asia, and we can see below that other nations. At the very bottom, we have the most beneficial nations to Britain. This is the positive immigration. This is Australia and New Zealand. It is the European Union, Latin America, North America. A huge spread of information, Nigel Nelson, which proves this isn't about being anti-immigration. It's about telling us the facts, telling us which nations are beneficial to Britain, which nations are a net drain on society, and I say, bring it on. The publication of this data is long overdue.
I'm with you when it comes down to publishing data. Data is fine. What you don't do is just publish it in isolation. So these are isolated figures. Let's take the figures of the round and see what they show up. So, for instance, Iraqis on this data are high benefit claimants. If you look at other data, OBR, Oxford Economics, HMRC data, you'll see that a skilled Iraqi working in Britain, 93,000 Iraqis here, working in Britain, will be contributing to the economy about £16,500. That would compare to a British-born worker whose net contribution is £800. Put those figures side by side so you can see what's happening. I'm not saying that these people aren't claiming benefits, clearly they are. But the majority are not. The majority are a net benefit.
OK, let me just get some data here, which from that Taking Back Control report, actually, when you look at the tax take from people in Britain, this is the tax take. Let me get that up now. I'll get that. Employment by nationality. You can see that you're cherry picking. You're cherry picking.
Some of those figures
No, they're not. What we need to do is have the entire national spread, and we have to face. You can't say that an Iraqi engineer is representative of the Iraqi population.
No,
but the net drain across
the
entire population, Iraqis clearly are a drain. We've seen that.
No, refugees are for the first 9 months until they can actually start working, and it takes them a while to be able to do that. So an Iraqi refugee takes a couple of years to be a positive benefit.
Well, I don't know where you got that data from, because it doesn't reflect any data, for example, that's published out there in
Migration Observatory. That one came from.
Okay, so how many of the? This is why we need the actual data. We need the actual data that gives us the actual spread and the percentile of those on benefits. I put it to you, what it's going to show when it comes out a week tomorrow is that the net drain across the entire population for countries like Iraq is a deficit. And I'll put it to you further. If there are countries that feature on so-called net drain lists, which we saw mirrored across the Dutch studies, for example, Africans as a nation, 59% of them in the Netherlands who come to work in the Netherlands are still on benefits after 10 years. And so what I'm saying to you is let's look at the entire nation, and we can say let's means test. If you're an Iraqi who's a high net worth individual, who's a brain surgeon, an engineer, great. but make it much harder for those who aren't highly skilled to come in. That might seem sensible.
Well, I mean, you have a visa system for that very purpose. But if you want to start taking those figures in the long term, that a British-born worker at the end of their life will be break-even point as far as contributions and what they've taken out. You take a foreign worker, and there'll be 28,000 in credit.
You can't compare all foreign. It's crazy to compare all foreigners.
This is the problem with figures.
Because what you're doing, you're taking the best immigrants. What I mean, best immigrants.
No, I'm taking
North
average.
Americans, Oceania, South Africa, Switzerland, Norway, Denmark, Sweden. These are the ones who go to other countries, input the most, pay the most tax, drain the least, and often retire home. You cannot compare that to Iraqis, Afghanis, and Iranians. That's the point.
The EU citizens who live here come up to 75,000, for instance, so they contribute a lot more. What I'm saying is these people are a net benefit, so we don't have to pay for their education. They tend to be younger.
Well, they go to state schools, so we are paying for it through tax.
We're not paying for the education of those people who are contributing their taxes because they've been educated abroad. We're not paying their pensions because they're younger. They tend not to use the NHS as much as a British-born citizen. The point basically is not that we shouldn't be controlling immigration, but if we're going to start using figures, let's use all the figures and put them together rather than just one set.
No, or we look at a nation that is a net drain across its entire populace and means test them so we only attract the best and we don't attract the rest. That's the point of data. That's the point of transparency. It's going to be published a week tomorrow, and that's when the conversation is really going to kick off. Nigel Nelson, always a pleasure. Now, coming up next, with trust in Labour's Border Control Act rock bottom, the Prime Minister faces a fresh blow. Brussels looks set to sink his so-called one-in, one-out migrant deal with France, just as President Macron arrives in the UK tomorrow. That's next.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We will see some heavy showers clearing overnight, but clear spells and largely dry weather return by dawn, increasingly sunny and increasingly warm during the next few days. Now, we've got low pressure clearing to the east. That low pressure brought us some unsettled weather over the weekend, cool conditions as well. It continues to bring heavy showers overnight to eastern parts of the country, some thunderstorms and some persistent rain. But further west, largely clear and certainly more widely clear by dawn. Under those clear skies, a fresh start to the day on Tuesday, temperatures ranging between 8 and 13 Celsius. But plenty of sunshine around first thing, certainly across central parts of the UK. Start off with barely a cloud in the sky through the Midlands and central southern England. Either side of that, there will be some patchy cloud into West Wales, southwest England, and some showers running down the North Sea coast into East Anglia. Thicker cloud awaits across parts of western Northern Ireland, and that cloud also starting to drift into the Western Isles. Some patchy cloud into the north of Scotland, otherwise Scotland's largely cloud-free. Plenty of sunshine, and that sunshine causing temperatures to rise quickly through the morning. But there will be further showers into eastern England. They tend to fade away by early afternoon. Still some cloud here and thicker cloud across Northern Ireland and western Scotland. A few spots of rain associated with this. High teens in the northwest, where we've got the sunshine elsewhere, low 20s to mid-20s fairly widely. And then we start Wednesday with plenty of sunshine once again towards the southeast, thicker cloud towards the northwest, some outbreaks of rain, mostly light and patchy for western and northern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And that tends to fizzle away later in the day as higher pressure builds, and that higher pressure is going to lead to widespread sunny skies on Thursday and into Friday, and that means widespread hot air returning.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, this evening at 9 p.m, once again, of course, Patrick Christys tonight, and the legend of that show joins me now. Patrick, what's on your menu?
Well, loads. Thank you very much, Martin. So, OK, it's the anniversary of 7/7. I don't know about you, but it's stuck in the craw a bit for me when I saw Sadiq Khan and Sir Keir Starmer laying reeds. I'm going to be having a look at what lessons, if any, Britain has learnt post 7/7. You know, for example, we had about 850 British citizens who went to fight for ISIS, and at least 40% of those have come back home. Where are they now? So I'll be talking about all of that. Also, as well, some slightly more light-hearted stuff. Some members of our armed forces attended Pride over the weekend, and a lot of them looked incredibly fat. So are we too fat to fight? I'll be talking about that and much more, as well as Sir Keir Starmer's one-in-one-out deal with the French appears to be in tatters. So, Martin, back to you.
Yeah, I've been too fat to fight for years, Patrick Christys, but look, I'm not a member of the armed force and I certainly didn't attend that Pride event, honestly. Patrick Christys, thank you very, very much. 9 to 11, beautiful stuff. Now, with the public's trust in the Labour government's ability to control our borders at an all-time low, the Prime Minister has been dealt a fresh blow today, and this time the European Commission, yes, his friends in Brussels, look set to torpedo the Prime Minister's flagship so-called one-in, one-out migration deal with France, of course. That's ahead of President Macron's state visit to the UK beginning tomorrow. So today's big question is, will the chaos in the Channel ever end? Let's get an Italian perspective on this now. Fascinating. I'm joined by an Italian journalist, Alina Trabottoni. Alina, a pleasure to have your company. So, Italy is one of the nations who signed this letter torpedoing this deal, along with Spain, Greece, Malta and Cyprus. Why are the Italians against Britain getting a deal with France?
Well, Italy, yes, as you said, is part of this group of nations that are contrary, that are against this deal, that would return Channel migrants to France within weeks of arrival. And the critical point that you know, the sticking point for these countries, for countries like Italy, and it's basically tied to the Dublin regulations, which is the EU law that says asylum seekers must first be processed, in the country in which they enter. The problem, the sticking point, is that if the UK sends migrants back to France, France could then invoke the same rules to send them right back to Italy, to Greece, to Spain, to Malta, which are the countries where most migrants first arrived in Europe, simply because of the geographical proximity of these nations to the main points of entry along the Mediterranean basin, you know, across from North Africa. So the concern is that this would create a domino effect where the burden of this accord would ultimately fall on Mediterranean countries. And officials from some of these opposing countries who I spoke to earlier today, in fact, say that the issue is that, you know, these countries actually had no part in negotiating the deal. And so ultimately they could face, you know, the fact that this deal is being negotiated bilaterally outside of a broader EU migration framework. And so they're starting to complain and raise, you know, questions about its legality, about its transparency. And they're also demanding clarity. I mean, how would it work? Would this deal actually produce direct or indirect consequences for other member states, the ones we discussed just now?
You know, Alina, you've crystallised it perfectly. Of course, countries like Italy are against this, because if immigrants are sent back, illegal immigrants want to take the greatest risks, they want to have the greatest propensity to be criminals or terrorists. Some would say they already are criminals, they entered a country illegally, they'd be sent right back to your nation. So obviously, you're going to stick up for your nation. And bravo to that. By the way, Giorgia Meloni wouldn't allow boats to land in Italy. She declared a state of emergency and made them land in France. If only we had a leader like Giorgia Meloni in Britain, we might stand half a chance. But isn't this cut back to the central point here, Alina? And that is nation-states such as Italy are sticking up for their own national interests and they're standing up against Brussels, whereas the United Kingdom isn't. We seem to be surrendering fishing rights, surrendering more and more power, and in return, we get diddly squat.
Well, yes, it's interesting considering Brexit and everything tied to that. But yes, Italy is sticking up for, its position and, is demanding clarity on this. And it's obviously, it's just one of a group of nations, but it is a great example because if you look at the numbers, and the numbers tell a stark story, Italy had 45,000 migrants arrive this year alone. And that's before any potential UK or France deal kicks in. And Italian officials, of course, fear that if this deal proceeds, they could see thousands more migrants arriving on their shores, and this time not from North Africa, but from the UK via France. And of course, the Mediterranean Five, that's Italy, Greece, Spain, Malta, and Cyprus. They've launched a coordinated diplomatic offence. They've sent a formal letter to the European Commission expressing serious concerns. They've demanded explanations, clarifications about the deal's compliance with EU law. And this isn't just diplomatic courtesy. It's a direct legal challenge that could actually derail the entire agreement.
Alina Trapattoni, you've beautifully summarised, why Italy is standing up for its own national interests and why they are going against France. It leaves us, though, somewhat in the quagmire. By the way, beautiful beach behind you with boats, and it looks like holiday makers, not illegal immigrants, landing behind you there in Italy. Thanks for joining us, Alina Trapattoni. Superb. Back to the studio now. GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. They've got a point. Why should Italy back up a plan which would end up being inevitably one-way traffic of illegal immigrants back to their own countries? But that neatly exemplifies the EU doesn't care about nation-states. It cares about itself. France doesn't give a monkeys about Britain.
Well, it rather depends on what the deal is. Alina also said that we don't know the details, and that's the key to all this. She's absolutely right. Under the Dublin Agreement, that we left when Brexit happened, it means that migrants can be sent back to the country that they landed in.
Except that never happened before Brexit.
Well, that was the point. That
a handful
went back from this country. So
smoke and mirrors.
So first of all, Italy may be worrying unduly because it won't be used that way. If France agrees to actually keep the migrants that they've decided don't come here, if they keep them in their country, no problem. What this will do, if it works, is stop the draw of the English Channel and be a start in stopping the boats. It won't stop them, but it will help.
How?
Simply because
it won't get numbers down. It's a merry-go-round.
No, what it means is if it's a one in, one out, it means those with a claim who might get asylum if they cross the Channel, those with a claim to living in Britain because they've got relatives here, would come across and wouldn't have to go in a little rubber boat to get here, while we send people back who shouldn't be here.
So it does absolutely nothing to control our borders. It just changes how they arrive here.
It does change how they arrive, but
how does that benefit Britain?
If we want to stop people crossing the Channel the way...
How does that benefit Britain?
The numbers won't go up, but they won't go down either.
Ooh. Great. So we've had record numbers come over since the Labour Party got into power, and that's something to be celebrated?
Yes, if you're going to do a deal, with another country, it's got to be a deal. We can't expect France to take everyone back. It would be like France saying, oh, actually, these people in Calais aren't our problem, they're Britain's problem. We'll ship them all over to Kent instead.
Well, that's kind of what's happening now. They're escorting them across the Channel.
Well, they're just not intercepting them in shallow water, but that'll start later on this year.
Do you sincerely believe that? A lot of people watching this show will think, here we go, we gave away 12 years extra fishing access to Emmanuel Macron in return for what? Potentially, we're allowed to be sat at the table about rearming Europe, but we can sit at the table with no guarantee of contracts, and now again, no guarantee of any return. It's going to be torpedoed by the European Union member states, and we pay £500 million a year for the privilege of this. Isn't it time to admit France is no friend of Britain's?
Well, France is doing more now than they've done previously under the last government. So The idea of the one in, one out, we help stop the boats.
Illegal immigrants arrivals have gone through the roof.
They have at the moment. We're talking about what France is now doing. They've now decided that they will be able to intercept them in shallow waters, water 300 metres out from the coast. They're talking about sabotaging the boats as they're coming across.
Once so far.
They've done it once so far, but now they're changing the law over there to sabotage more. So they are doing something. Now, the boats won't stop, but this will help.
OK, the boats won't stop, the gangs won't be smashed. Round and round we go. Nigel Nelson, no doubt, have the same conversation on my show on Wednesday. Thank you very much. Now, coming up next, Armed Forces Day was celebrated nationwide this weekend, but one Labour-run council stripped the parade of uniforms and equipment, fearing it might glorify war and spark protests. You couldn't make this madness up. That's next.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The heat wave across Europe is increasingly becoming confined to eastern areas of the country. Temperatures here could locally still be 5-10 degrees above normal for the year. On the edge of that heat, though, there are some heavy thunderstorms breaking out for the Balkans and over the Alps. Generally further towards the west, though, temperatures now easing back towards average, but northerly winds bringing a touch of cloud to parts of Iberia, as well as Madeira and Tenerife. Generally, though, for many areas over the next few days, there will be a lot of sunshine around.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Dorby. Now, Armed Forces Day was marked across the country this weekend, but not everywhere, with pride. Not that pride, I mean national pride. Because one Labour-run council banned military groups from parading with uniforms or equipment, fearing it might trigger a protest and be seen as uncritically glorifying war on Armed Forces Day. Well, instead, locals were handed a map and told to take a self-guided tour of the city's military landmarks. More woke madness, you might think. Well, let's see what my two guests say. Because I'm now joined by GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and hoping interview Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, who, of course, is chairing State of the Nation later this evening. Sir Jacob, may I come to you first? The notion that banning people, armed forces, veterans, those presently serving, from wearing military equipment, their uniforms, carrying weapons or going in vehicles in case it sparks protests, surely is just insane.
Oh, it's really very silly indeed. There's a noble tradition on the left of pacifism, but this isn't it. This is about commemorating people who have served their country, who have done their duty. And of course it's about uniforms and it's about equipment. But these are the silly sort of people who ran ESG funds which wouldn't invest in armaments industries until they realised that Russia was attacking Ukraine and we'd better have some equipment pretty quickly. It's just deeply silly, and it's part of the left-wingery of the Labour Party that you get the same types who still think CND is a good idea.
Nigel Nelson, council officials in York said the ban followed resident concerns, didn't name any of them, that displaying military kits could offend or trigger a protest. Who on earth would be offended by proud British veterans displaying their goods on Armed Forces Day?
I think you've got the key there is that, in fact, the people who actually bring these things to such events, they tend to be military veterans. So they fought bravely for their country and they're proud of the equipment they've got. I don't think they're actually banning uniforms here, they're actually banning equipment, so weaponry and so on, jackal armoured cars, that kind of thing. But I don't agree with it. I don't think they should do that, especially on Armed Forces Day is about the armed forces, show the arms.
Isn't this part of the problem, as Jacob said? This is the kind of, not only nitpickery, but nitwittery of the woke Labour left. It's like, of all the things to pick on, why, in the name of sweet baby Jesus, pick on the armed forces?
Well, I mean, I don't think this is Labour Party policy, by the way, so I'm not sure that you could actually attack the party for it. It may be a Labour-controlled council there, but it's not sort of... I don't think you'd find Keir Starmer would ban any of these things. However, I do agree it is wrong to do it, that on Armed Forces Day of all days, all these things should be on display.
Okay, Nigel Nelson, some might say the first sensible opinion you've had all night on the show. Only kidding, Nelson. Thank you very much. Now, Sir Jacob, you're obviously chairing State of the Nation next, but could I get your take on the exclusive story that Chris Hope had at the top of the show, and that is David Jones, a former Conservative Party Wealth Secretary and, of course, a Minister in the Department for exiting the European Union under Boris Johnson, has defected to Reform UK. Some say the biggest name to defect thus far. You know Mr Jones. What's your take of his character?
Oh, he's an extremely able man, a nice man, very decent man, long-standing Eurosceptic. I think he is the biggest figure that Reform has got to defect so far. As you say, a former Secretary of State, somebody who was very popular in the House of Commons, sensible, decent man, reasonable views. He's not in any sense a headbanger. I think it's a real coup for Reform to have got David.
And a lot of people saying that, will this pave the way for a big beast to defect? Sir Jacob?
Well, I don't know. I don't know of anyone who is planning to defect. They're talking big beast. I understand my daughter's been seeing pandas on her trip to Hong Kong, so there may be big beasts all around the world who plan to do all sorts of things.
There could be a by-election popping up in your former constituency. Reform could do very well there.
I think Reform will do well in many by-elections at the moment. That Reform has the political momentum. Nigel is making the political weather. This is a boost to Reform. I understand David said he's retired and won't be coming back.
Yeah.
That's a pity, because actually he is a very able man. He could play a very good role within Reform and within its policy making, particularly on the Eurosceptic issue.
OK, Sir Jacob, enough about my show. What's on your menu tonight, sir?
Well, Well, I'm going to be talking about the front page of the Daily Mail, where Sir Andy Marsh, who was Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset, has warned about cannabis and the crime associated with cannabis. And I'm coming increasingly to the view that Peter Hitchens is right, that this is a really dangerous drug, that it destroys people's minds and it's behind an awful lot of crime. We've got cannabis laws, but nobody enforces them. I'm going to be speaking to the Dorset Police and Crime Commission about this, about how serious a threat it is and what we need to do. And I think what we need to do is to be active and to stop illegal drugs, really have a war on illegal drugs, rather than just mouthing the platitudes and basically allowing it in London to carry on regardless.
Or even move towards a partial decriminalisation of it, as London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan is currently tabling. State of the Nation is up next with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, before we move on, I have a statement from York Council. Claire Douglas, the leader of the City of York Council, said this: with our military partners, we carefully consider residents' concerns and decided that they will go ahead as planned, with the only change being no military equipment on show. And I wonder, actually, how many people even complain. We'll never know. Anyway, coming up, State of the Nation is next with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. I'll be back tomorrow 3 till 6. But first, here's your weather, and it's Aidan McGibbon.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We will see some heavy showers clearing overnight, but clear spells and largely dry weather return by dawn, increasingly sunny and increasingly warm during the next few days. Now, we've got low pressure clearing to the east. That low pressure brought us some unsettled weather over the weekend, cool conditions as well. And it continues to bring heavy showers overnight to eastern parts of the country, some thunderstorms and some